So my name is Saul Gowens. I'm the founder and CEO of Websand. I'm on the road to become a general professional practitioner in the art of GDPR, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Excellent. So to begin with, can you tell us, or just give us a bit of an overview of what is GDPR and when's it coming into force?
All right, well, it stands for the General Data Protection Regulation. It's replacing the Data Protection Act from 1998. It's also got a twin brother or twin sister, depending on how you want to describe it, coming into force on the same date as the 25th of May 2018. So that's less than 4 months away, which is called the e-privacy directive. GDPR is about putting regulatory policies and procedures framework around the personal data that you hold in your business, and the e-privacy directive kind of extends that into how you track and manage data from people that you're dealing with online.
Right, and this is going to impact everyone, all businesses across the board, pretty much.
So the way to think about it is, if you have sold anything to anybody, then you've collected personal data. You know who the people are, you know what they've bought, you know where they've been, you know what they've done. And obviously that then feeds into your accounts and so on and so forth. But also, if you employ anybody, that's also personal data because you've employed a person. So it's not just personal data, it's also personnel data.
Gotcha.
And it's also, a good way of thinking about it is looking at it on how it would impact you.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're trying to do is put a balance in terms of transparency between businesses that are holding personal data and the awareness and understanding of the people that are giving them that data in terms of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, Facebook's a great example. Do you know what Facebook are doing with the data that you are giving them every day?
Yeah.
The likelihood is you kind of got an idea, but you don't know for certain. So part of GDPR is to make sure that you do know for certain, and potentially that could have different levels of consent. So it might be consent in terms of the ability to use Facebook, but actually if you want to control the levels of processing that they do, so for example, I don't want my information to be fed into a Facebook pixel algorithm or something like that, then you could opt out of that easily. At the minute, I think you can control it in settings, but it's not the easiest thing to do, and people don't know about it.
Yeah.
So it's about transparency.
Okay, cool. So we've kind of had a chat about this recently, and you kind of opened my eyes a bit to, this kind of touches lots of different parts of the business, but I guess the one that most people think about and are kind of maybe most worried about at the minute is when it comes to sales and marketing. I think that's what most people think of when they think of GDPR and how they manage customers and potential customers' data.
Yeah.
So in our industry, with the building product industry, one of the things that we see quite a lot, and it's probably unfair actually to say in our industry, it happens in all industries, but particularly in this industry, it's pretty common when we ask companies, how you reach in architects and specifiers, that a large part of that approach is that they've bought a mailing list of architects from somewhere, or they've scraped from somewhere, and they add them to a mailing list, to a newsletter, and they're sending them regular updates. So how does GDPR impact that approach to sales and marketing specifically?
So that's one of the real challenges. So that's there's a two-pronged answer to that. The first prong, if you like, is it's not just about sales and marketing. It's about any personal data that you hold in the business. So if you're just looking at it in terms of, well, these people have opted in versus these people have opted out, it's much, much bigger than that. That's the first thing. The second thing is the rules around consent. So I'm this afternoon probably just going to put a very ranty post in LinkedIn about this.
Good.
Is there's a reason why I'm on the route to becoming a general professional practitioner in GDPR. That's because they haven't actually finished the course. They can't finish the course because the rules around consent and the rules around e-privacy specifically haven't been finalised yet.
Right.
So I guess there's an opening date of this building, to take a building analogy, the 25th of May, right? They haven't really set the foundations yet. Some of them are in place, but not all of it.
Right.
So consent's the last bit. Now, business to business, the likelihood is that businesses need to talk to businesses in order to generate business. So that's likely to continue in some shape or form. Business directories are still going to exist. However, the classification of business to business versus personal data is still a little bit up in the air, but because of the consent bits up in the air. But my understanding is if you're targeting someone in a limited company, that's fine. If you're targeting someone that's not in a limited company, then it's the same as talking to any member of Joe Public, and that falls into the personal side of things. So if you're dealing with architects that are working under a partnership, for example, and you can't prove that you've received their consent, or you can't prove a term that's called legitimate interest, in other words, a rock-solid reason why you can contact them in the first place, and that might be a case of whereby, well, their details are on their website, then you go, okay, well, fair enough. So there's a bit of a minefield for them to deal with. But in terms of that, if you think something's a bit dodgy, then the likelihood is don't do it. Because the rules and regulations around this are getting tighter. So scraping, it doesn't even sound very nice.
No. And I guess, so one of the challenges potentially in this particular market, as you kind of touched on, is that a lot of architects do operate as partnerships and sole traders and stuff, as well as companies. And I guess like there is there kind of a blurred line between that kind of the B2B and the B2C. So to reach another company to do B2B, you generally have to go and contact an individual person. So is there a blurred line, or is it quite clear between if you contact their business email address, then it counts as B2B, or is that still a little bit up in the air?
Well, if they're a sole trader or a partnership, then it's likely they're going to be classed under personal data rather than business to business data. If the information about these people is freely accessible, and then you should be fine. So if they want to be contacted and their website is saying contact us, then you can contact them. They want you to. That's why it's there. They're open for business. And that's one of the myths that's flying around is businesses won't be able to call other businesses. All right, well, that means the economy's just going to shut down pretty much straight away, which is lunacy. So another one is around consent. Is one of the examples that's given for legitimate interest is, as let's say I'm buying something from you online, you're selling dungarees or something daft like that. I buy dungarees from you, but you actually I haven't given you my consent for me to be processed because you do something fancy with dungarees, and I'm not interested in that bit. So what people are suggesting is, because you haven't got consent to process my data, you can't actually send me the things that I've bought, despite the fact I've paid you for it and I've told you where to send it. Obviously, that's ludicrous.
So there has to be a bit of common sense within it.
Common sense, but obviously it's got to be rock solid common sense, because the issue with common sense is everybody thinks that they have it.
And then I guess sort of building on that, so companies that do have mailing lists and they've built it up in that way, like it is their customers, it is people that have engaged with them through their blog or content or whatever. I've seen a lot recently getting emails from companies trying to get me to sort of reaffirm my consent for them to market to me. Yeah. Is that something that's sort of recommended for companies to do with their mailing list, to clean that up and reaffirm that?
Yeah, I mean, you should be keeping this stuff clean anyway. Effectively, what GDPR does is it drives you to put a risk assessment type process, which construction people know what to do about that. But for the information that they collect around about people for personal data, so that's a really key part of this. So you just got to be a little bit wary around consent at the moment because the final rules aren't there. So what they're probably doing is they've collected consent in the past by asking people to untick a box rather than tick a box. So that's why they're re-asking for consent. But they have to be asking for consent against something. So they haven't updated the privacy policy in line with what GDPR, in line with their own policies and procedures around GDPR. They're going to have to ask for it again.
Yeah.
So actually you need to get your policies and procedures in line first before then going out and asking for consent. Because it might be that you consider these people that you're already engaged with to fall under legitimate interest, so you don't actually have to ask them for consent because what you're doing, they expect you to anyway. So it's a pretty grey area, but you've got to deal with the beast first because people have to show consent against something. So at the minute, if you're collecting consent and you haven't actually updated your privacy policies and you haven't gone through the full GDPR process, then, and you can't have because we don't know what the full rules are on consent or and cookies, then you're wasting your time.
Yeah, got you.
It's the cart before the horse.
Yeah. So I think this is kind of similar thing, and it's maybe already been answered, but in terms of other kind of specific approaches, again, that we see quite a lot in our industry and what people are using. So another common approach is to use services that will sell you information about upcoming construction projects and give you a list of architects, contractors, who are working on that for you to get in touch with, to start to market to or sell to. So I guess, again, that falls under, it depends whether that contact is an individual in terms of an architect or...
Well, actually, it depends on what level of consent the business that's selling the access to these services has from the people whose information they're providing in the first place.
Probably none.
So they're going to have to be able to prove consent. So let's say I'm an architect. I've been included in one of these projects and it's been sold on to several different businesses. And as an architect, I've become pretty annoyed of the fact that lots of people are now contacting me to try and get involved in this project. I've already got it covered off. So what's likely to happen after the 25th of May, or probably very soon after, because one architect will talk to another one, someone will complain to the ICO about that practice. So the ICO will then investigate that practice and will then apply its own ruling. So the onus will be on that business that's selling the access to prove either legitimate interest or consent and awareness that that information has been processed and has been made available for sale. And if they can't prove that, then they're going to be in trouble. Yeah,
that's interesting. So the scenario we kind of have a lot in the industry, so some research we done, I think that the figure was 20% of architects say that they get daily unsolicited calls and emails from product companies trying to sell them products on their projects. 40% get them weekly. It's a problem, and there's companies are having to essentially put gatekeepers in place to be able to get on with some work because they're getting so many calls. And so where that comes from is, so 20 different window companies buy the same data about the same project, and they all get in touch with the same architect and say, we see you're building a hotel, you probably need some windows. Can we sell you some windows?
So the root cause then is coming from the company that's selling the access to that data. So if that is known by the architect then that's the route of complaint to the ICO, and then the ICO will investigate. And again, the onus is on proof of consent.
Yeah.
Now, if they've got the consent and they've sold that on to 20 companies, then that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
But the likelihood is, if that consent would need to come from that architect in the first place, and they'll only give that consent once, because one of the things now is, at the moment, under various terms and conditions, a prime example, whenever you update any software on a phone, anything like that, or on your computer, do you read the terms and conditions?
No.
Exactly. So the previous Information Commissioner called us a nation of liars, because we just say, yes, we agree to that, bang, off we go. Apparently it takes about 5 hours to read the full terms and conditions for Apple. That's what I was being told. We ran four GDPR workshops this week. That's one of the stats that came out when we were running these things. So the onus is going to be on to put forward very clear understanding in terms of what people are doing with their data. So as soon as people understand what's really going on, then they'll have the ability to remove themselves from that. They can be forgotten.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, it's very difficult for that architect to remove itself from that process, because that process is uncontrolled by the architect. GDPR is going to allow the architect to get involved and say, stop doing that, remove me from this. Whereas at the moment, there's no real route that they can go around.
Right.
They can kick off and they can threaten things, but there's no real legal jurisdiction.
Got you.
This would give that. So you can be forgotten. You can request not to be included in certain things versus others. Request free subject access requests. Lots of things like that.
Okay. So as an architect, I can go. There will now be a process in place that I can make sure that I'm removed from these databases that are selling on my details.
Yes. So whoever's controlling those databases, you can contact them and say, remove me from this data.
Okay.
And they have to do that.
Yeah.
If they then don't, within whatever reasonable time period, say 30 days, whatever it is, I think it should be instant actually.
Yeah.
But anyway, if they don't, then you can report them again, so to speak. So it's about putting the balance in place, because at the minute the balance is with the people that have got the data, whether people have agreed to have that data about them shared or not.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And that's whether it's subconsciously given or not. That's why consent needs to be positive, clear, and unambiguous.
Yeah. So that kind of leads on nicely to kind of one final area where that I know a lot of companies are using, and that's that there's various services around now that provide kind of reverse IP lookup on your website. So there probably isn't anything that has less consent and is less obvious. You visit someone's website, they track who you are through an IP address, and they match it against a database to find what company you came from, and then the owner of the website then tries to contact that company or that individual.
Yeah.
So what does that mean, or what does this mean for those services potentially? Is that
this is where it's linked in the privacy thing. So although that's not finalised, final yet, the guidance from the overall regulation is passed and approved by the EU. So what that's saying is IP address and cookies are an extension of our own personal data.
Yeah. So
if they're going to do a reverse IP lookup, they need to get your approval in order to do that.
Okay.
And they need to be clear in terms of explaining what it is that they're going to do. So as soon as, it's like I was saying before, as soon as you understand what's really happening with your data, the likelihood is you're not going to accept it or want it to be included. So that, I think, that's a business area that's is probably going to need to evolve pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it's a dangerous business to be in at the moment, simply because we know the rules are changing. We don't know exactly how the rules are going to be implemented yet. But that's following the lines of consent and following the lines of personal data. That's what's likely to happen.
Yeah.
So if you use that type of thing to drive a lot of business, you won't be able to. Or the amount of people that actually say yes to it is going to reduce how massively how effective it is.
Yeah, I can see.
That's me feeling.
Yeah, I can see gathering consent for reverse IP lookups going to be pretty tough to get from people. So as you say, I think probably the important thing is for companies, if you are using these things, particularly as you say, if you rely quite heavily on any one of these particular approaches, it's probably time to be looking at how this is going to impact it and maybe changing some things.
I mean, you don't do anything like that, do you?
No.
So, well, because you're a smart cookie.
On
the phone?
Yeah, very good. So maybe just to finish off then, so we've kind of talked about these, the regulations and how it's going to change these different things, and you sort of touched on there's that right to be forgotten. An architect can say, I don't want to be in this database.
Yeah.
Can you provide a little bit of insight into what are the penalties then for companies that do breach these new regulations?
Well, just going to look one up right now. So there's a lot of scaremongering going on in terms of what a fine might be. So, the easiest way for a GDPR consultant to sell themselves is to say, you're going to get fined 20 million euros. Mm-hmm. If someone tries to sell you it like that, then you're not talking to the right people. The reason I say that is there's a great part of the ICO website called Mythbusters.
Right.
So what is likely to happen is that the fines will go up. Let's have a look now. All right. So here's an example. So a company, this was this week, 17th of January, last week. A company has just been fined £350,000 by the Information Commissioner's Office. The company name is Miss Sold Products UK Limited. And they made 75 million nuisance calls in 4 months.
Wow.
Right? All about PPI compensation claims and all that type of stuff. ICO got 146 complaints about that from the general public. Mm-hmm. And partly that is because a lot of people don't know where to complain. Yeah. So the ICO, one of the outcomes of GDPR, I think, is the ICO is going to be much more of a promoter than just being the police. Mm-hmm. So at the moment, they're a body not a lot of people know about, not even businesses know about it. And if you're collecting data, you should be registered with them. So that's a starting point. So they've been fined 350 grand. Because at the moment, there's a limited number of fines that the ICO can issue. Mm-hmm. So moving forward, the likelihood is that fine would be substantially more than that. I think the prime example that we've come across, which everybody knows about, that's a cast iron example of a 20 million euro or 4% of global turnover fine is Uber. Yeah. And the reason why is it's 57 million records, it's email addresses, it's phone numbers, and it's names. But also, there may be some other stuff as well. We don't know. They haven't been transparent about it. Any kind of breach needs to be reported within 72 hours. They paid a hacker, didn't tell anybody about it, and they sat on it for well over 9 months. They've never contacted the people. They think there's about 2 million people in the UK being affected. Right. I could be one of those people. I've never had a message from Uber telling me that this has happened. I've read about it in the press. So every single thing that you need to do as part of GDPR, they simply haven't done. Yeah. They're a massive example waiting to be made. So people are saying, oh, well, someone's going to be made an example of. Depends what they've done. Yeah. If you've had a massive hack, you've kept quiet, you've paid ransoms, you haven't told anybody about it, and you haven't been fully transparent with what's going on, you're going to get hammered. Yeah. It's dead simple. Yeah. So, yeah, that's...
But in general, so like one of the big things I picked up is, I guess, as you said, the reach of ICO is going to be a bit more like that. Or certainly that they have powers to go further. They like companies that have been fined for breaches in the past under the new regulations. Those fines would have been much bigger.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But what they're saying is it'll be proportional in terms of what their current fine structure is.
Yeah.
They're not fining people to take people out of business.
Yeah.
They're fining people because they've they've done something which is a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or they made really bad decisions in the event of some kind of security breach.
Mm-hmm.
That's typically what's happened.
Okay. Cool. So I think just to wrap up.
Or can I make one more point?
Yep.
One more point on that is the ICO won't be going around and auditing individual businesses.
Yeah.
They will be reacting to complaints. And the likelihood is, because of the balance of power shifting,
mm-hmm.
what is previously considered to be the types of things like PPI
mm-hmm.
could well cross over into GDPR. So have you has your data been processed without your permission? Contact us for compensation.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be some new types of businesses appear to help people make sure that they can complain in a lucrative manner, shall we say?
Yeah.
So in the event of a complaint happening, you need to make sure that you've got the policies and procedures in place, because that's what they'll check to make sure that you aren't going, well, we didn't know about this.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to know about it.
Cool.
I think that's important.
Yeah. So for any kind of building product companies, people from building product companies that are listening, what would you recommend as a good starting point for them to start to get their head around this? Where's good to go and read about? Should they get in touch with you and come speak to you?
Yeah.
What you kind of recommend?
Well, the first thing is, of course, we can help. We've got processes in place to help people make a good start on this type of stuff. What I would say is we've got the knowledge in terms of what the framework is and how to apply it, and to make sure that you go as deep as you need to go. We're not lawyers, but a lot of this case is not necessarily legal. It's compliance. So if you're a building product company, you're building something. So you'll already have policies and procedures in place, and operational policies and procedures in place. You will have an understanding of risk assessments, things like that. So you'll have an understanding on how regulation works in a much deeper way compared to other industries. Yeah. So I would be looking at applying that to the data that you collect and how you collect it within your business, internally and externally, so against your staff as well as externally. That's a really good place to start. Yeah. And then you contact people like us and we'll help guide you. That's going to be the quickest way, because the legislation is huge, and it has to be huge because it's got to cover the county council as well as the flower shop seller and everybody in between. It's one size fits all across everything. So there's lots of stuff in there about children. There's lots of stuff in there about sensitive data. There's lots of stuff about international jurisdiction. There's lots of stuff about lawful basis for processing. A lot of that might not be relevant. Yeah. So actually, the amount of stuff that's relevant to each business is totally different depending upon that business. So understanding where you start and which bits really fit is I guess that's where we can come and help, because in a lot of cases, you don't necessarily know what you're dealing with, and you need some help, a second pair of eyes to come in and go, right, okay, explain to me what you do, right, what about this, what about that, what about that, okay, do this. Action plan, off you go. Yep,
got you. So essentially, as you said, for a lot of these companies, they'll have procedures and stuff in place that apply to other parts of their business. It's just about taking some of that and looking at data now as this important asset that has to be properly looked after.
Data runs all the way through it. Yeah. So where does that data exist? What is the structure of that data? How long do you keep it for? Why do you collect it? Because loads of businesses, when it comes to data, usually fall into three categories. I've got loads of data and I don't know what to do with it. My data's crap, or my data's all over the place. Yeah. And those are three things that need to be addressed as part of this. We come across that all the time before GDPR. Websand's a big part of dealing with that stuff for people anyway.
Yeah. Great. That's fantastic, Saul. So How should people best get in touch if they're interested in having a chat?
Send me an email, saul@websand.co.uk. No doubt you'll put that next to a post or something like that.
Yeah, I'll include the details.
We've got a form that you can fill out as well, just to explain a little bit more about who you are. I think that's, I'll put the link on.
Great, we'll get the link in.
Yeah.
Cheers, thank you very much.
You're welcome.